Hey everybody, ModelMan here, continuing work with the Jupiter 2. And as of now, there are two sequencers built into the flight deck here. I'm looking at installing the third, but I need a little bit of a diversion for a little bit, and there's a couple things with the exterior that need to be done before I can get too much further with the flight deck. There's still a lot of work I can do, but I really need to start test fitting it into place to know where the room is that I do or do not have anymore. And to test fit this into place, I need to clean all this up. I think this was pretty much from the start kind of like a temporary sort of situation going on. I may have thought some of these wires were going to be here permanently, but for the most part, I think I pretty much knew back then that there was going to be a good amount of cleanup, and the amount of cleanup could be severe, or hopefully it could go relatively easy. Things that are staying: all of the LEDs for the sidewalls. Some of these tubes may need to be cut down because of the requirements of that stuff there. I don't know if or when that's going to happen or where or anything yet. I initially installed these I-beams as general supports. I still want to keep them if I can. These two here have to coincide with this mess right here primarily. So this landing leg here is this mess right here. So I've done some measurement to see how far that is and how far this is and all that kind of thing. And it really comes down to needing to get the piece in place and see what's going on and get a feel for it. Alright, so in the case of the cool white LEDs here for the freezer wall, I think those and their positions are almost exactly in line with the position of the RGB LEDs for the freezer tubes. So if that is the case, and I very strongly suspected that it is, I'm going to have to pull them out. The blue wire is a tip-off that those are blue LEDs. I'm pretty sure I did that intentionally at the time. There's 5 or 6 of them. They're getting pulled out. I had thought they would supplement the cool white of the wall really well, but they don't do a thing for it. It's really cool white all the way. And if the cool white comes out, then what I'm going to be doing is throwing in a foot or two of LED tape. Again, cool white. And what I'd probably do is notch these slats here so I can angle it in so it's roughly facing this orientation. And I'll have to do that cutting before I pull those out, so I make sure that I kind of ballpark get it right. And then I just run 2 strips somewhere in this range here, probably going back and forth. It could be like 14 or 16 inches all the way around there perhaps, because this is a complicated area and it needs to be simplified as much as possible. Another little complication is drill right there. That represents this freezer tube right there, and that one is sitting inside of a landing leg, or partially at least. So the sidewall is going to have to be cut out, and I've got a good idea for how I'm going to patch that after. And you'll probably see that there's an installed leg here. Oh, and there's a couple more legs there. One of them completely glued, the other one disassembled, and then the full one installed. I've got a project to do with that. It's coming up. I'll get to it. That's what actually I was going to start talking about, but then I realized there's this whole other huge stuff going on that really needs to be addressed somewhat immediately. These 3 posts may be able to stay. All the various power junctions with the springs here, most of those are going to go. Since I know where all the wires are, I don't need generic junctions like that anymore. I can start hardwiring things into a much simpler combobulation, and I'll probably use a lot of the same wire just so I don't waste it all, because there's a lot of it here. One trick I want to do is run some big cables like this through a landing bay area just to give it a little character. I realize that when you're looking up there, you're supposed to see a nice clean doorway entrance, but having 3 of them around on all sides being perfectly clean, it seems like one would be more of a back gate storage kind of third-rate stowage entrance sort of place with maybe some stuff sticking in the way. So that's the kind of flavor that I'm going for. It may not necessarily be accurate, but it's just a little personal touch I want to throw in there. One thing I've been noticing with the sidewalls is that even if the wall and the ceiling get pressed into place, there's still a few where the fit is not really perfect. Like this sidewall right there is hovering above the surface, and getting that to stay down is not necessarily going to be easy. I should have a clamp that big, but we'll see how it goes. Regardless though, any stuff like this going on, all that's going to have to be shaved down so that this is totally flat. These pegs here, I am strongly considering, thanks to Elliot Brown's suggestion, that I go with some kind of nut and bolt situation. That'll allow it to be pulled off, and it'll make sure it's totally secured all the time. So in that case, I'd have a bolt on the underside so I could just hold that in place with a finger and then screw it down from up above the second deck. And then all of this area is already pretty empty. It's just this stuff at the back, but even this for the flight deck is going to be in the way because there are a lot of tubes coming down here. And in fact, I'm probably going to have to clear out a fair amount of area. I really need to, like I say, get this in place to know what's going on. The plan for all these LEDs here is that I'm either going to trim the wires and then just solder them all in sequence to each other with a single pair of wires coming out the bottom, or if the LEDs allow it, I'll just kind of maneuver them underneath the front of the previous tube and sneak them together really close. Run a main line around the base here and then connect that probably up here, I guess. So no, run a main line up around the outer rim rather. I'm also going to have plugs so that the deck will be modular from the bottom, and where all that is going to go, I don't know. At this point, I'm starting to stuff things into place. It should be a pretty good fit, if not perfect right now, but as it gets more complicated, I've still got another dozen LEDs I'd like to put down, maybe. Yeah, probably easy a dozen, 10 more at least. And if that's one per tube, even if I go 3mm tubes, that's going to be a lot of space required for that. Plus all the wiring for it has to be run down from the upper deck and so on and so forth. And there's still a few more LEDs I got to install on this thing overall as well, but that's more in the upper side of it. So I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to nip where I have to, tuck where I can, and get rid of all the extraneous nonsense going on here. And as I'm getting all this together, it's time to start looking at the Fusion Core sequencers. Only one of which can call itself a proper Fusion Core. The rest, they're just circular sequencers. One last thing is that I think I mentioned part of it, but I'm hoping to keep all the I-beams, and I'll probably have to move them, but I would like to keep them there simply because this deck is about to get real heavy. And in every case, I'm going to hope that I can simply knock it loose. This one's kind of tough right now, but it's got a little time to go. Having this one loose with this kind of glue baking soda base already is going to make it easier to stick down in place when it does go, and I'll be able to shim it wherever I need to, and it should fit pretty well. So with that, let's dig into it, I guess.